Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to another episode here at WILDMAN Lifts. I'm your host, WILDMAN. Now on tonight's episode, or day, depending on what time you're watching this video, I wanted to kind of show you a back-to-back workout that I did. Literally, I did deadlifts one day, and then I did bench press the next day, all in giant set format. But I was using the chains, and you've seen my channel long enough, you know that I love using chains. Primarily because they're not only a great training tool, but you can actually overload the movement, or if you're not feeling the greatest, then you can add the weight that you want to the chains, and it makes it a little bit easier just to kind of hit the weight that you want to do without having to compromise in the weight. You can still hit the same weight with those chains on. It's just going to be a lot lighter at the bottom of the lift. So let's pop into today's workouts and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So for deadlift day, I'm adding those chains, and I'm mainly just going to work up to a 3 reps total. Primarily just working on speed from the bottom of the lift to the top of the lift in single deadlift format. And as I'm going up in weight on the deadlift, I'm going to be doing some WILDMAN flags. They're actually called dragon flags, but because they're not as strict as most people have pointed out to me as dragon flags, I call them WILDMAN flags because it's a great core exercise to do regardless. And I'm going to be doing some rowing intervals as well, just to kind of make sure I'm getting the same movement going as the deadlift. However, as I was doing this, I kind of discovered that my left Achilles tendon wasn't feeling the greatest, and I really don't know why. It just feels like there's a lot of wear and tear on it. So I wanted to keep some low impact on it, and that's another reason why I'm using these chains today. I just want to make sure that I'm able to get through it pretty effectively. And I'm only going to show you the deadlifts and the WILDMAN flags. I'm not going to keep going back and forth to the rower because I feel like that you get the picture. I don't need to keep showing that. So one of the benefits is when you're doing a deload, chains are really good to use, which is kind of what's happening right now. I was supposed to do a lot less weight than this on deadlift day, and I really didn't want to do it because I wanted to be somewhere in the 400s. I didn't want to be in the high 300s. I wanted to be in the 400s. So I kind of thought, well, what if I just practice a 1 rep max movement, but instead of doing it with the weight that I want to do, I can add some chains on there, and then it'll be a lot easier for my central nervous system and my spinal erectors to recover, but also my Achilles tendon can take a break as well since it wasn't feeling the greatest. And this ended up being a very good thing because after I was done with this workout, my Achilles tendon actually felt a lot better because I was getting some blood pumped to that area from working out. And since I wasn't using as much heavy weight as I usually do, I was able to kind of keep it in a rehab state and kind of prehab it with blood getting through it while getting a good sweat on, but also lifting at least above 400 pounds because that was the goal for today. And it was around the 425 pound mark that I kind of realized that I needed to dial it back a little bit today. So I was only going to do 2 more reps for 3 reps total on the deadlift, just because I had to lean a lot more forward than I wanted to on the deadlift because I needed to compensate for that Achilles tendon, which was feeling a little weird today. So this ended up being pretty good for the day, and I actually packed that up and put that away and felt pretty good because I was able to get a good sweat out of this still with the giant set format. So on to the next day. Now literally the very next day, I was doing the bench press, but this time I was throwing the chains on, but you could just see how high those chains are. And I actually put them through a ring that was in the gym because I wanted to make sure that most of that weight was on the bar, but I still had enough chain on the bottom to make sure it wasn't wobbling around because that was not the point of today's exercise. And in between, I was doing something called the polyp press, which is something that's great to do on bench press day because you're doing that pressing motion, but it really works your obliques. And if you do this correctly, you really start to feel your obliques burning, which you need to have when you're on the bench and that weight is moving from side to side. And then I was doing the assault bike, mainly just to try to raise my heart rate and to get some extra conditioning in between my sets. And that was the strength giant set for today's workout. So unlike the deadlift day, where the deadlift was actually focusing on speed, and I was focusing more on 1 rep versus a bunch of reps in a row, because it's a lot easier on deadlift to do reps in a row. Once you're braced and tight like that, lowering it to the ground and lifting it back to your hips is actually easier the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rep than it is the 1st rep. That's why it was in that format the day before. But for today's workout, I kind of was like, well, I'm going to do a 3 rep max with the chains. And I kind of wanted to do 315 pounds, which is 3 plates on each side for my top set. But again, that wasn't really the point. The point is kind of to take it easier this week and to kind of, do a little bit more than a deload than I typically would do. So it's kind of like a deload plus, if you think about it. And looking at this video, I would say adding those rings to the chains actually makes it where about 50% of that chain is decompressed to the ground. If I just threw that chain, since it's a loop around the ends of the barbell, I believe it was about 40% of the chain that was getting decompressed into the ground without those rings. Now that I've added those rings, it's about 50%. So that kind of makes it a little bit easier for my math in order to make sure that I'm getting the most out of my workout. So basically I'm losing about 20 pounds at the bottom of the lift, and then I have 20 pounds still left on the bar. And then as it goes up, then that full 40 pounds is added to the bar, which to me is kind of perfect because I kind of definitely wanted more weight on that, but I didn't want to overload it too much like I've been talking about. Now, once I was done with the chains bench press, I immediately moved on to the incline bench press. And unfortunately, that bench is a little bit janky, so I'm not able to do as much weight as I wanted to do. So instead, I just did 3 rounds and I worked my way up to a 10 rep max because I just mainly wanted to finish off my chest, but hit the upper portion and just kind of make sure that I was finishing off what I just did on the flat bench press. And since that bench is a little bit janky and a little bit higher than I'm used to, this ended up being a little bit more difficult than I anticipated. But that's okay because I was able to get through it and was able to finish the workout pretty strong. And in between, as I was going up in weight, I was still doing that polyp press, and I was making sure to hit both sides because you have to make sure you hit both sides when you do the polyp press, and the assault bike as well, which I was doing the entire time. And that was the workout for the day. So that concludes 2 workouts in 1 video. I hope everybody learned something new, and I really appreciate everybody stopping by. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.